Good morning, welcome back to our shop just outside Kennesaw here in North Georgia. Well, I've been commissioned to fix this little kitchen table. It's probably from the first 20-25 years of the 1900s. It's got a lot of things wrong with it, and we'll get to it here in just a minute. I haven't been asked to refinish it. That's not in the budget, so we're going to leave the finish right as it is. Try to take care of the repairs. And I thought I'd bring you along with me, so let's go. Here's the first repair we're going to take care of today. No, this isn't a leaf. This is actually a joint that's supposed to be in the table itself. So we've got to get this cleaned up and glued back together. And you can see here I've already put some wood screw clamps on opposite corners of the table. As you can see, this is curved, and we want to be able to get a real good clamping pressure on this to keep this joint tight. And because this is curved, obviously a regular clamp's not going to hold. So basically all I did was just put this wood screw on here. I've got a little block of wood wedged in between the wood screw and this shaft, so that when I put a clamp from here to here and squeeze it, it's not going to mar the edge of the table. And I just taped a piece of wood on the side here. You'll see how this works in just a minute. And anytime you're dealing with a molded edge, it's very difficult for a clamp to get a good purchase on that small part there that's flat, and what happens is it always rocks back and forth. So the solution is to create a little block like this that allows you to put this over the molding and give you a flat area to clamp to. Now the question becomes, how do you make this? And the answer to that is this tool here. This is a pattern maker's tool. This is a cheap one I've had for years. But anyways, all you have to do, you can see here I've got that profile already, is just take this and push it against your molding, stop where you want your block to stop, and that gives you your shape. Then you just trace this shape out on the block, take it over to the bandsaw, cut it out, and you're ready to go. So I guess the next stop for us is to trace this onto a block, take it over to the bandsaw, and cut it out. That's what we're going to cut out. You can see how we've got this pipe clamp pulling against the back of this, which is attached to this to squeeze this joint together. We've got a regular bar clamp here that will sit on this block that we made. I've got that taped so I'm not dropping stuff as I'm trying to hook things up. Same thing here. And then we have the second bar clamp on the wood screw here. To protect the surface, I'm using these little pads. This is just one of those, I guess I'm not sure what you call it, closed cell foam maybe. They come in tiles. You hook them together and you can put them in kids' playrooms and stuff. But I just cut this up to make these blocks. So the next step is for me to take this all apart and get the edges of these two boards nice and clean and get some glue on them and then clamp them up nice and straight. Now just so you know, I'm going to use hide glue in most of the repairs on this table, but this one's going to get regular wood glue, regular PVA glue, because I need the open time. It's cold, and if I use hide glue and I get into a little bit of trouble getting things lined up, the hide glue might start to gel and I'd have to start all over again. So for this particular repair, I'm going to use yellow glue. So here we go. And this is the surface that we're going to glue together. This is on the the loose piece, not the piece that's still affixed to the table. And I'm just taking a scraper and very lightly getting rid of any old glue, any dirt, anything that might be in here, but at the same time I'm being very careful. I don't want to take this out around. Or out of square, I'm sorry. So just like that, I'll do that on both pieces and I'll bring you back. And you can get an idea of how much stuff came off of that that one piece. This is dried glue and dirt and things. I want to brag a little bit, show you how clever I am, I suppose. This little thing I concocted, I think it's a great idea if any of you are interested. Basically all I did was hot melt glue some magnets like this one to the bottom side of these two different size cups onto this piece of steel. I think at one time it was a body dolly from an aircraft mechanic. But anyways, with these like this, what I do is I just take similar cups and stick them in there, and then if I'm working with either color or glue or whatever, I pour them in there, and when I'm done I just take these out and throw them away. And now I'm not knocking over glue cups anymore, which is something I was doing with alarming regularity. So if any of you think this is a good idea and can put it to use in your shop, feel free to steal it. But I'm usually not this clever, but I guess I kind of entertained myself with this one. All right, let's glue up that that tabletop. Here goes nothing. And I hope you can see we got good glue squeeze out the whole length of the joint. So I'm just going to do some minor adjustments here and we'll set this aside. I'll bring you right back. Okay, I think we got it. I had to throw another clamp on there. I used a piece of that foam flooring as a cushion, and the only reason being is that the tabletop dipped in the center, and it took quite a little bit of gymnastics to get those two top sections to line up perfectly so they were nice and smooth. Had I been able to refinish the top, you know, I could handle a 1/64 of an inch difference and sand off or scrape off, but in as much as I'm not going to be able to touch the finish on this, I want to get that just as good as I can. Alright, we're going to let this dry overnight because this is a critical repair, and we'll move on to something else here shortly. Okay, moving on to the leaf. I don't know if you can see, but we've got this huge crack in the leaf here and a smaller crack next to it. Now, usually your first instinct's going to be, well, let's just, you know, stick some glue in that crack and we're going to clamp across it and we will get it back together. But if you look at the back side of this, you can see we have this brace and it goes right across this crack. So what we want to do is get this off so that we can see if we can get this wood to move. So I'll unscrew this brace, set it aside, then we'll throw a clamp across here, see if we can get that to close up, and if so, we'll get that cleaned out, get some glue in there, and get that done. If we can't get this to come back together, then we're going to have to come up with an alternative plan, which would involve filling the crack. But let's get this brace off and see how we do. And what happened there is the head of the screw caught the piece of wood and popped it off. So we'll just glue that right back where it belongs and all will be well. Don't lose it. It's off. Let's throw a clamp across there and see if we can pull this crack together. Okay, good. That crack's going to come right back together for us, so let's get some tools. We'll get that crack cleaned out best we can, get some hide glue in there, clamp it up, and we'll have that one done. Let me show you how I'm cleaning out this crack here. First thing I'm doing is taking some dental floss, and I'm just going to work some dental floss in here and make sure that I knock off any dirt that might be in there. I don't think this is anybody's ever tried to re-glue this, but just make sure all that's out of there. And then we'll take some compressed air. Make sure we blow out anything that's inside. And this is hide glue. I've not used it on the channel before. I'm actually going to start using it more, I think. But anyways, it's been heated. It's in this little jar here. And then I'm just going to take this syringe and load this up with a hot hide glue. Back to our table. And let's just inject as much hide glue into this joint as we can. Okay, I think we're on hold now. We got to let this tabletop cure before we do anything else. The remainder of the repairs to the table are on the underside and involve the legs and aprons, and I've got to get it flipped up on its top to take care of that work. The leaf has been glued and clamped across that big split it had. As one more repair we have to do, and it involves this pin, which has been crushed and no longer fits. So this pin has to be cut out, drilled out, and a new pin inserted, and then the leaf will be done. So probably we'll get back on this tomorrow. I'll leave everything just to get a full day's curing before we move forward. I'll bring you back tomorrow. Good morning. Let's take off these clamps and see how we did. Well, there you go. I think that seam came out great. We've got a little glue to wipe off here. Very, very nice. Over here we had a split. That's all back together. Right there is where it was. That's all back together. And let's see how we did here. This is the crack that we used the hide glue on. I'm sorry, I'm holding you with one hand as I'm taking this clamp off. Very nice. Right there is where it was. It's not there anymore. And our next job is to get this deformed pin out of here and replace it with another one. So I'll show you how we do that shortly. Okay, we're on this locating pin here, and it's got to come out. First thing I'm going to try to do is see if I can pull it out. It might be loose, but it's not. So what I'm going to have to do is cut this flush and drill it out. And I always start my hole by finding the center here. And no matter how hard you try, you'll never get it exactly in the center. And then we start drilling it out using progressively bigger drill bits. Probably the best type of drill bit to use for a situation like this is called a brad point bit. Fortunately, my brad point set has has gone missing, so maybe Santa Claus will bring me a new one. All right, and this is a 3/8 dowel. I've got it drilled up to 5/16, which is one size below it. And we've just got this little sleeve here to come out. Sometimes these things pop right out and sometimes not so much. And this one's really not cooperating very well. I'm going to get a 3/8 drill and see if I can just drill through that. I'm going to start with the drill on reverse. Now forward. Nice and slow, but it bored out. You don't want the drill bit catching. And that's the dowel that we're going to make our pin out of. Okay, measuring the depth of the hole with this gauge here, it's a little bit bigger than 1.25 inches. So if we go 1.25 inches and then measure the height of the existing pins, that's just a little bit bigger than 3/8. We add those two dimensions up, and that's going to be the length of the pin that we're going to replace the pin that we just pulled out with. And I took our pin and chucked it in my drill, and then just rotating it in the drill like this, put it up on the belt sander at a bit of an angle to put this little chamfer right here. I'd have showed you how I did that, but there's just no room to get the camera back there. It's not really any big deal. It will just help this pin locate the hole when the leaf is used. Now this is going to have to be pounded in the last 1/2 inch because the drill, obviously the drill hole is more accurate down there rather than where it was wallowed out up here. So I'm going to glue this and pound it in, and we should be able to get it up to our mark. So let me get some glue and we'll get started. Okay, a couple of precautionary things. First off, blow that hole out, make sure it's clear. Second thing I did is I put little grooves with a handsaw in here, so as I push it down into the tight spot, if it's really tight, I don't have air pressure trying to pop it back out. The air can escape. I know it's loose up here where the hole is wallowed out. And I'm just applying some hot hide glue to our piece. And a little down inside. Okay. There we are. And there we are. It's in. Camera's having a tough time with the focus depth here, but that pin is taken care of. So we're just going to let that dry, and then this leaf will be done. And one other thing on the leaf before I forget, you remember we took this brace off, and the reason that this split, we believe, is because this brace held this piece too tight and it couldn't expand and contract. So what I'm going to do is just drill these holes one size oversized, and then we'll put the screws back in, and that way as the piece expands and contracts, the screws should be able to do this. The heads of the screws will sit on this ledge in here and still be able to provide the support it needs. Candle wax. I've removed all the screws that mount the apron assembly to the top. Let's see what we've got under these legs. I haven't got this all the way loose yet. Oh man, we caught a break. No dowels. The only thing holding this top on is the apron assembly, which is screwed onto it. So you can see how badly this leg assembly has come apart and how much room we have here between the apron joint and the base of the leg. All right, let me work on getting the rest of this off and I'll bring you back. I have the apron completely disconnected from the tabletop, so I'm going to mark some pieces and then I'll bring you back. We're going to start to take these this apron assembly apart and re-glue it and get it so it's nice and strong, and then we'll decide how we're going to remount this whole thing. And before I can get the top and apron separated, I had to slide this piece of the crank mechanism out of its bracket here, and you can see that bracket has been moved at least once. That's where it used to be. It's been moved down here. I've got a tie wrap around it to support it. Now I'm going to pull the apron off. And here's our apron. It's all marked. I marked the legs and every piece that goes into it. And then I marked these cross pieces, A, B, C, and D. So blowing this entire apron apart and re-gluing it is going to be most of what we're going to do today. And I noticed that we're missing a locating pin here, so I'm going to have to fabricate one, put in just like I did with the other one. Then we're going to set this top aside and we're going to work on the apron. Okay, I've got all three pins were loose. I found the missing pin on the floor. It just fell out. So I've re-glued all 3 pins. These pins are definitely replacements made from dowels. They're back in, that's all I can say. So the top we're going to set aside now, and we're going to work on the apron. I want to get these screws out, get this cross piece apart as part of breaking the apron apart, and those screws are not turning. They're very narrow slotted screws and they're in there tighter than heck. So what I'm going to do is heat them up with my soldering iron that I got from a yard sale for probably a dollar. We're just going to sit that on there for a minute or so, and as we know, we learned from one of the viewers, 52 Nemours I think is the name he goes by, that if you heat these up they tend to come out easily. So we'll see what happens. And after heating the screw for about a minute, it absolutely helps break the bond, and the screw's coming out now. Little ouch. Duh, it's warm, but there there it is. I've got 8 of these to do. I'll bring you back. We've got the 2 cross pieces off. The second cross piece held the screw mechanism to the crank. So now we're able to take this right apart. To allow us to start working on all these loose joints. Just to give you an idea how loose these joints are. There we go. So what I'll be doing is taking all these joints completely apart. We'll clean them, we'll prepare them for re-gluing, and figure out a clamping plan as to how we're going to get this together. And while we have the legs off, we have at least 2 legs that have misaligned repairs. We're going to give the old college try and see if we can get them apart and re-glued. So we got a ton of work ahead of us. As fate would have it, the leg that has the tape wrapped around it is also the only one that's securely glued into its aprons. Obviously it was taken out and repaired. So I'm going to pull this tape off. But I strongly suspect that this was heavily glued with PVA glue. I'm going to spend a little time to see if I can get it off. I'm not going to spend a lot of time to see if I can get it off. I'm not able to refinish this, so if I singe the finish, I'm going to have a problem. I'm going to have to correct on my own. These types of things, these misaligned repairs from a prior person may just have to wait until this thing gets a full refinish. But I'm going to give it a whirl. If I can get it off in a few minutes without doing any damage, I'll take it off and reset it. And what I'm going to do is just use the heat gun. I'll heat the piece up very carefully, try to work knives in here and see if I can get this off. I suspect that there's probably PVA glue slopped in the whole thing, and it's you know, this is a thick piece. This is, you know, 2 inches thick at least, and there's no way this heat gun's going to heat up the glue in the middle of this wood without singeing and doing some damage here. So I'll give it a whirl for a few minutes. If it doesn't work, I'll probably just fill this crack in with some wax to make it look a little bit nicer and move on. All right, this is as I expected. This is very heavily glued on, and with just a little bit of heat I'm starting to feel this finish getting soft. It's just not coming off. I'm not doing it. It's going to cause more damage than it would repair. So what I'm going to do, since I can't sand this and color it, is I'm just going to work some wax in these cracks. It's a courtesy to the owner, and it's going to stay the way it is, because it's just not in the budget to get involved trying to get this off. And the same thing on the other leg. So I'm going to move on to cleaning out these mortise and tenon joints and getting ready to glue this back up. And this is the leg joint. You can see the dried glue that's on here. All this has to come off. And then I've got to take a chisel and get inside this mortise and get that cleaned out as well. And I've got to do that for every single piece that needs to be reattached. So it's going to take me a while, but this is how I'm going to do it. I'm just using scrapers and try to get as clean of a joint as we can, so that when we re-glue this piece, it stays together. Okay, we've got our joint cleaned out. We've got it nice and tight finally. I've reinstalled the cross piece. This is screwed down right now. This will be screwed down as soon as I pull this off. That way when I glue everything up together, this angle here is going to be correct because it's being determined by the length of the existing cross piece. What I'll do is blow this joint apart one more time. We'll get hide glue in there. We'll get it pushed back together. We'll get it clamped up and set it aside. Here we go. And the second half of the apron assembly has been knocked apart and clean and ready to go back together. Let's glue it up. Another timeout. Look what I just found. That appears to be glued in like that. I'm going to have to play around with that for a few minutes. And I was able to get that broken piece glued and pounded back in where it belongs. Right now it's clamped up. So we're on hold for a while until I can get this clamp off in a couple of hours. And while we're waiting for that repair to set up, which is going to be a while I think, I thought I'd show you how I go about tackling these cracks on these legs. Here's a seam here. I've already laid down a layer of brown wax, but this is just regular soft wax. I have this heated pin that I can use. It's battery powered. And all we do is just lay some melted wax in there. And you can obviously melt the wax with a hot knife or whatever you have. And we're really just going to use this as a crack filler. It's not structural, it's just for appearance. Alright, once you've laid your wax in there, you can just take a rag and push down as you rub it, and it'll rub off all the excess wax. And you can see it's starting to come up here. And there you go. Fills in that crack. I use the black to match the darkness in that joint. That's all there is to it. No big secret. Okay, I guess I'll bring you back when I can move forward. Not sure if you can see, but from here to here was a split. I filled that with epoxy putty and colored it in, and then the same thing up here on the leg. And then we took care of this with some wax and color as well. So all this little cosmetic stuff has been done as well. I think it's time to glue this old girl back together. What do you say? I think you can see the joints are nice and tight. And we're looking good there. Parts of the frame assembly have been repaired and re-glued. We'll let them set overnight. We'll put it all back together tomorrow morning. Pretty good day. A little bit of frustration today, but we plowed through it. See you tomorrow. Good morning. Let's get these clamps off, see if we can put this old girl back together and get her on her way home. Here we go. Okay, let me get these clamps picked up and we'll get on with the assembly. There's 4 of these little tabs that basically slide in these grooves. There's 2 on each part of the table. So I'm going to put some wax on them, and this will help this thing move. And I'll also run some wax in the grooves, just as a courtesy to the owner. Just like that. Okay, let's put it together. And this part right here is actually I guess it would be called the nut of this crank assembly, and this actually screws to the underside of this oak piece right there. So let me get that attached, and then we'll attach that oak piece. Okay, I got the table flipped over. I've got both cross pieces installed and they're properly spaced. So let's get this nut reattached to the cross piece, and then we'll start working on getting the top back on. And I waxed these screws just as I did the other ones. It really makes a big difference when you're putting something back together. And with the top off, you can see how this crank mechanism works. It basically just forces this inner portion of the apron out and then pulls it in as you turn it. Just like so. Alright, time to do the top. And before I put the top on, I'm just taking some candle wax and waxing this surface here, which is where the two pieces of wood rub together. I also put some lubrication on the screw thread here, so it should go a little bit easier for the owner. Here's the screws that we took out of the top. You can see they're all rusty. I'm going to take a few minutes on the wire wheel, polish these up, and then we'll reinstall the top. Okay, we're ready to reattach the table apron assembly, apron and leg assembly. And I'll try to find the original shadow lines to help give me a guide. And we're right in there. Got our screws waxed up. And how's this for cinematic integrity, huh? I got you inside the table, propped up on a pair of pliers. I feel like I should be playing some kind of Wagner theme as I screw this in, because this is probably the coolest shot that I've ever taken. Alright, I'm going to get the rest of these screws in and I'll bring you right back. Well, here she is all put back together, back down on the floor. I'd be lying to you if I told you I wasn't somewhat relieved that we got this back together the way we did it. It looks great. It closes, the seam closes nice and tight. Take you around, but you can see the crank seam closes nice and tight. The repairs we did are effectively invisible, and that's without refinishing or sanding, so I'm pretty happy with that. The crank mechanism now works very smoothly, and remember, this table should have wheels on it, and it does not, and it's one of the reasons it's a little bit short. But by lubricating the mechanism and the work that we did in getting everything straightened around, this works out great. And while we got it up, let's go fit the leaf in. Okay, the leaf fits in very nicely. In my opinion, all this piece needs is the top refinished and a set of replacement wheels, and I think she's a winner. Well, I hope you enjoyed this video. We did a lot of repairs on this old table. I think we did a good job. I think it's come back a whole long way, and I appreciate you sticking with me as we went through this little ride together. So anyways, from our shop just outside Kennesaw here in North Georgia, best regards, thanks for watching. Take good care, and remember, it's just wood, color, and some shiny stuff. Catch you next video. Oh yeah, I'm supposed to tell you, like, comment, and subscribe. And watch how clever watch this, watch that. And smash that like button. I killed myself. Thanks, see you next video, bye.